Hello everyone, hope you're good, hope you're well. Welcome to today's video. I figured it's been a while since I did one of these Ask Reddit Q&A videos, and why not? So here we are today. Today's video is going to be focused on AI product management or AI in product management. And it's been a reality, honestly, lately that a lot of product managers are probably encountering, even if it's in job posting, if it's in conversations around how you do your work. So I know it's a topic of interest for a lot of us. And so, as always, I dig through Reddit to see a bunch of the top asked questions, and I'm going to be providing some responses to those questions based on my point of view, based on my experience. So let's get into it. I may be looking down here, but that's me trying to find the question that I put together so I can provide some of those responses. Also, I've grouped the questions into 4 broad categories. Category 1 has to do with the role and the definition. The second category has to do with execution and decision making. Third category is influence and trade-offs. And the last category is about learning and growth. So let's get into the video. Role and definition first. The question here says, how would you define the role of an AI product manager? That's a very good question. You've probably seen this in job openings where people are looking for AI product managers, or you have conversations or what podcasts where everybody's saying, oh, as an AI product manager, what does that mean? At the fundamental root of it, an AI product manager is still a product manager. An AI product manager still does what a traditional product manager would do in terms of how you think, how you come about problems, how you decide the problems that are worth solving, how you go about solving those problems, and how you measure the impact of the work that you've done. So fundamentally, you're still a product manager if you're an AI product manager. However, you're working within a problem space where AI is a tool that you leverage to solve some of those problems. That's really what it is. It means that the technical skills and know-how and the domain in which you are operating is within the artificial intelligence LLM data space. But fundamentally, you're still a product manager that's still trying to solve problems. Secondly, as an AI product manager, I believe a lot of expectation is also placed on you, which is also placed on product managers, to bridge the gap between AI and business value, to manage uncertainties that come with AI. Think broadly about the ecosystem of artificial intelligence and AI tools that plug into your product or your solution to bring value to your organization, which, like I said, it's still part of the expectations of a product manager in any domain. However, in this case, it's in the domain of AI. Now, it may also be helpful for me to say what AI product management or an AI product manager is not. An AI product manager is not a data scientist. An AI product manager is not a software engineer. So there has to be intention with drawing the boundaries between what you're doing and what a data scientist is supposed to do, or what the software engineer is supposed to do, so that you don't lose sight of the value you bring in as a product manager and then get into the rabbit hole of digging too much into the technical execution where you forget your value as a product manager. And so go back to understand what a product manager is supposed to do so that you know how to marry that alongside the AI domain space that you're playing in. That's my very brief response to that question. Which interview/stakeholder questions reveal depth in AI product work? My guess is this person is asking this question based on some form of product manager interview prep. So they're trying to understand what kind of questions will I be asked in an interview to show my depth in AI product work. And I would give about 3 responses to that question. The first is, 1, you have to show your product management expertise in terms of, I am able to align value that we can generate for customers to business needs. I'm able to understand where the areas of big opportunity and value generation is within the domain within which my business plays. That's the first thing. I'm able to understand how to work with the engineering teams on the technical trade-offs that need to happen. And there's a lot of technical trade-offs that need to happen, especially when you're working within the AI domain, or when you're leveraging AI to solve people's problems, or when you're building an AI-based product. There's a lot of trade-offs, there's a lot of technical decisions, and so you need to show that you understand the space, you understand artificial intelligence technologies, you understand LLMs, you understand data, you understand how to solve those kinds of problems, how to make decisions and trade-offs to come about the right solution. So that's a very important skill. So you're not just thinking about how I use AI in my everyday life. You're thinking about how I'm able to make the right decisions to put AI into the hands of my users. And so that's the second skill that you need to build. And I think you also need to be able to think about ethics and trust, how to ensure that your users are able to trust the solution that you put into their hands. Because there's also a lot of concerns that users typically would have with respect to having AI solve some of their problems. So those are the key questions that I think you should anticipate in an interview that is trying to evaluate your depth in AI product work. First, being value alignment. I'm able to identify the areas of opportunity and align that to the business needs. Secondly, I'm able to understand the technical trade-offs and decisions that we need to make when we're leveraging AI or integrating AI into the solutions. And lastly, I'm able to communicate with my users the value so that they can trust the solution that we bring to them. So with this, you can start to think about the questions that would come up depending on the industry within which you're interviewing. How do you see AI evolving in PM workflows? I believe I have a video that might be coming out very soon that is also around product managers using AI in their workflows and what that would look like for us in the future, or could potentially look like for us. But here's a quick 3 point agenda on my response to that. One is automation of grunt work, automation of work that you've done over and over and over again, and then you don't need to reinvent the wheel. That could be backlog grooming, that could be PRD generation, that could be prototype generation. All of that has become grunt work now, but things that get you going faster. That's one area. Second area is decision support. I think a lot of people now are able to use AI as a sounding board. Oh, I have this idea. I have a first draft of this. Critique this PRD. Critique this product strategy. Let me know what you think. Where are blind spots? Where's the market research to support this? Be able to use AI as a sounding board to support some of the decisions that you're making. And this basically means now that you've been freed up of grunt work, now that you have a companion to be able to support some of the decisions that you make, how do you bring a human side into AI, which is an evolution of PM work? So now you're freed up to do more human stuff. You have more capacity to be able to introduce a human element into how we solve problems and also decide that we're solving the right problems. So that's how I see AI evolving workflows as product managers. So those are the questions I have with respect to the role and the definition and workflow and things like that. Now I'm going to go to the category of execution and decision making. How do you decide when AI should be integrated or not? Very, very good question. The lens within which I'm going to be thinking about this question is around how do I decide that the solution is worth going forward with at all? So first of all is, does it create value to the user? I'm not going to always be asking, should AI be integrated or not? The most important thing is, does this solve the problem for users, period? Fundamentally, are we solving a user problem? That's the first question that needs to be answered before we get to the question around, should AI be integrated or not? AI should only be integrated firstly when we know that a problem is worth solving. Now, when we decide that a problem is worth solving in terms of deriving value for users and deriving value for the business, if we solve that problem, then we can now decide to think about the options that we have with respect to technically solving that problem. And the second thing that you need to think about by the time you start thinking about bringing in AI is the operational costs. A lot of people probably forget sometimes that it costs a lot to actually build an AI-based solution. It costs a lot of tokens, the server resources are expensive, and so there has to be a thinking around, okay, we've decided that this problem is worth solving. Is it worth solving with AI? Like, is the cost of deploying an AI solution for this problem, is it worth it? What's the return on that investment? And the third thing I would also consider is also user related, but in terms of the trust and the user experience. And that's how you eventually design the solution. Because if you have a valid user problem to solve, and if you have an operational cost that is reasonable, if your users are within a space or an industry where they do not trust an AI solution, or you cannot bring it to bear in a user experience that is relatable to the users, then there was no point solving the problem with AI. You probably will have solved it in a different means by which your users would accept that solution. So that's the third thing I would think about. Do you have the trust of your users to use an AI-based solution? And do you have the design and the experience to be able to put that in a way that can be consumed by users? Because I've been in situations where we have fantastic ideas, we have a valid user problem, But somehow our users do not allow AI-based solutions to be deployed in their environment. And so AI was not a valid use case there, not because it was not the best idea and it wasn't operationally possible or cost friendly. It was just because users were not open to it at that point in time. And this may just be a point in time thing where much later down the line, then it becomes a more feasible solution for your users. Not every feature needs AI, honestly. Use AI where it creates genuine leverage at a cost that you can afford. Do not get into the rabbit hole of slamming AI for AI's sake. The moment you're starting to describe your problem and you have to use the word AI, you're probably over optimizing for the AI keyword. So tease everything out in terms of what's the problem that we're trying to solve for users without using the words AI or using AI in your messaging. AI is just a tool or a mechanism by which you solve a problem at the end of the day. Okay. Next question I have on execution and decision making is, how do you measure success for AI features? I mentioned a lot of things in the previous question around cost, around user value, around trust, around user experience. And it's also the same way by which we measure success for any feature. And I typically think about this within three broad categories. First is around the business outcome. Do we achieve the business outcome? If it has to do with revenue, if it has to do with churn, if it has to do with engagement, whatever that looks like, the business level outcome. And that's why when you're thinking about the problem from a user value and a business value, whatever that looks like, it has to be defined from the top level business outcome. That's the first category. Second category is not particularly looking at that feature, like a feature level outcome in terms of, is it usage? Is it the number of people that sign up? Is it the number of people that, do a first action? Measure the impact of the use itself. So you need to take that down a notch in terms of adoption, in terms of retention. Are people coming back to use it? What was their first experience? Did they get the quality of outputs that they expected? So there you also have to do qualitative and quantitative metrics. So it's not enough to just measure how many people are clicking, but the AI output, if we measure the quality of that, does it pass a smell test? Does it pass a user test? Does the user come back to do more? Is it accurate to what a human will have produced? So those are the things that you measure in terms of the AI or the feature itself and the quality on the second level. And then when you go down another level, you want to measure things that have to do with your guardrails and performance and cost and latency, because it's, to my point, it's not enough to put AI into the hands of users. It's enough to think about the broad implications and the cost. With every of your metrics, you also want to have a guardrail to make sure that you're improving the business level outcome and the feature level outcome in a way that is sustainable and it does not impact every other feature. So for example, if you're thinking about a feature that is supposed to generate summaries of something within your product, from the business level metric, you're probably going to be looking at things that have to do with engagement and user retention. Maybe a particular cohort of users are retaining more. On the feature level, you're probably looking at how often are they using it, how often are they generating the summaries, how many minutes are they saving from generating their own summaries by themselves versus the AI doing the summaries for them. And then by the time you're not thinking about the guardrails and the performance, of course, you're thinking about the cost to deliver that into the hands of users. You're thinking about the latency and the speed. How quickly is it? There's no point if you're generating summaries for users and then it takes them 5 minutes. There might be a drop off at that point. And you also need to think about what is the implication of putting this feature in the hands of users? What is the impact on other features in the product that this may be directly or indirectly correlated to? So that's how I'll measure the impact of an AI-based feature. Basically, measuring the impact the way I'll think about the impact of a typical feature from a business level, from the feature level, and then the guardrails and performance metrics that are in place to make sure that we are growing sustainably without impacting other aspects of the product. Okay, how has AI changed how you build and prioritize products? Maybe I'll answer this from a personal point of view. I mentioned the earlier thing around, eliminating grunt work and then freeing up your time for some more decision making. But just to go down further a bit more on that response to address this, you have to develop new mechanisms and new ways of measuring impact. There's a need to think more about the guardrails that your feature has, because that in and of itself can be detrimental. and not necessarily by the feature itself. The feature itself might be great, but what did you compromise? What are the guardrails for you to be able to deliver that feature into the hands of users? So I find that it means I have to think about new metrics of success very intentionally, especially those that have to do with guardrails, that have to do with cost, that have to do with latency. I'm not saying those things were not there in other typical product features in the past. But I find that these have more implications on how users receive an AI-based product. So you have to exercise new muscles for thinking of product metrics, especially those that have to do with guardrail metrics. There's ethics, there's trust, there's accuracy, there's do people even like this? All of that, you need to be very careful with how you measure those other guardrail metrics. And the last category of how it changes how I think about and prioritize products is there's a huge educational piece with AI based features that a lot of users need to have. How do you really educate your users about a technical feature? Again, not saying that that was not existent in the past, but a lot more people are curious now. A lot more people are more intentional about what goes into their work or a feature that they are using. So you need to be careful to educate users more accurately, to help users troubleshoot, to help users navigate errors, navigate issues, navigate hallucinations. Meaning that you don't just ship an AI based feature, you also have to think about the educational piece and how to help people navigate edge cases. I think that's one thing that changes how I prioritize product features now when I'm thinking about an AI based feature. Good. So the next category of questions I'm going to be going into is around influence and trade offs. This person is also asking something that probably has to do with an AI PM interview. And they say, have you used AI in product case interviews? Well, personally, I have. So, there are a lot of GPTs that I've, used and created for mock interviews for structuring my responses. So, I have used AI in acting as a sounding board and assessing my responses. I've also used it to anticipate some questions. So, for example, looking at a job description and trying to say, hey, what are some of the questions that you could potentially ask me here? Yeah, so those are the ways in which I've used AI in interviews, particularly for product case, coming up with content structuring, because with your product case it's quite hard to collapse maybe months and years of experience into a 5 minutes response. Tell me about the time you did XYZ and like, oh my god, I need to collapse 3 years of experience into a 5 minutes response. So structuring that in a way that the interviewer understands and they're not overwhelmed by all the details that you give. So that has been really helpful. I've also used it in many cases to feed my product kit responses and ask it to critique and find rabbit holes and use that to also generate follow-up questions that the interviewer could potentially ask me. So that's a really good one. So those are the ways in which I've used AI in product kit interview. I would say thou shall not bring AI into an interview conversation. Use it to prepare. Use it to anticipate questions, use it for mock practices, but you should not be asking your AI assistant questions right there on an interview. I think that is unethical. Even though a lot of people argue and say, well, on the job, I can ask AI, which is fine, but when you are being assessed in an interview, you are not necessarily assessed based on how fast you can use an AI assistant to answer the question. They're just trying to have a conversation with you to understand how you think, to understand your experiences. And I think using an AI assistant in an interview is actually not okay. It doesn't, yeah, your integrity is at stake there. It's fine to actually answer some questions and say, you know what, I haven't encountered that scenario before, but this is how I'll think about it, and then give them something based on a hypothetical scenario if you've not experienced something. Okay, that's it. How to use AI and how not to use AI in product case interview. Next question. Ooh, what challenges have you faced influencing engineers on AI direction? I'll also answer this from a personal point of view. I think very early on, when AI was still quite fresh, when a lot of people were still trying to find out, okay, how do we introduce AI and integrate AI into our product and position ourselves? This was maybe last year, 2 years ago, when it was still very green. I think one of the challenges then was one, being able to articulate clearly and communicate with the engineers, because it was still new then, it was still fresh. So there was just a lot of bombarding of keywords, and you need to kind of like use a mental model to understand everything they were saying in a way that you could comprehend and contribute to the conversations. But that's changing a lot now. A lot of people are now familiar with a lot of those AI keywords, LLMs. We know what it means, I hope. AI agents, testing. You know what testing would look like for an AI solution, or how you should have your test data and your training data and then production. It's now a bit more familiar, and I had to go back and then, read up. And again, the product feature itself exposed me to a lot of all these things, which meant, okay, now that I know about these things, I have to catch up. So that's the first area of challenge that I faced, influencing engineers on AI direction. It means that if you don't even understand this language that they're speaking, it may be hard for you to chime in and influence the direction. The second challenge I would say is also being a voice for the user in a way that you can influence the direction. Because it's one thing for you to be able to understand traditional product management, how to understand user needs and user problems, but you need to take it a notch further and a step further by being able to interface those problems with an AI language, so that you can have conversation with the engineers. Oh yeah, users want this report XYZ. Okay, but then how does this AI based solution actually help solve this user problem? You need to also do a lot more than just understanding the problem, but being able to retrofit that problem into the AI space. Again, it also boils down to the first point I made about understanding the language, so that you know how they're trying to solve the user problem in a way that you can contribute effectively. So that's the thing. Constantly being the user voice. There's also another side to the point of constantly being the user voice, because by the time you now start identifying the knowledge gaps that you have, there's a tendency for you to get into a rabbit hole of technical knowledge upskill that you forget about the user. And sometimes you feel left out of the AI conversations, and then you get into a rabbit hole like, okay, now I need to upskill, I need to learn all these things, and you forget, oh, we're just trying to solve this small problem for this user, and you don't give yourself the opportunity to actually even explore the problem beyond the breadth of the AI solution that your team is thinking about. So that's something that you need to be careful about, burying yourself too deep into the solution because you identify a knowledge gap, and then taking a step back and still maintaining a user perspective in the conversation. So you need to be very intentional about keeping the user's perspective first. How do you balance technical complexity versus customer value? This is also a typical product management question, but with AI, again, there's a lot of nuance because it's a fairly complex concept and space and field. But I'll say a couple of things with balancing technical complexity and user value. First is keep it simple, stupid. Honestly, be honest we just need to keep things very simple. Simple always beats complex every day, every time. Keep your MVP simple, keep your feature set simple, keep an understanding of the user problem simple and specific. Don't try and jam a lot of problems into one, because I also noticed that early on when I was working on the first AI based solution. It was like, oh, because the AI can do this, now we can then do this, then we get too excited about the possibilities and we forget the primary problem that we're trying to solve. So keep your problem definitions simple, keep your MVP very simple. Second thing about balancing technical complexity and user value is test early as you can. Test it with early users. You will know if it's too technical of a solution. You will know if the user experience that you've presented does not work for your users. You would know when you test early. So again, it's still a traditional product management principle. In any AI based solution, there's always the risk of adoption. So test that adoption risk very early with early users. Understand which users would have a hesitation to adopting, and test that the usability of the AI based solution that you've presented is actually great, because you could have a very great solution but then just the usability is not that great. So test that risk early and then iterate with feedback from your users. I think that's typical product management 101. Great example of persuading leadership to adopt or not adopt AI. I've been in cases where leadership was more inclined to adopt AI than I was, and I've been in cases where I was more inclined to adopt AI versus leadership. So I'll speak on both perspectives. When leadership was not that persuaded to adopt AI, a couple of things I did was one, if you see a genuine need, give them a strategic lens to it. And that means that even before you as a product manager is proposing an AI-based solution to solve a problem within your product space, you yourself must be very familiar with AI as a consumer, as a user, and you must have proven the value that, hey, us using AI is actually a good thing. So imagine the potential for this if we bring it to our users as part of our solution. So you need to have excelled with internally adopting AI, at least from your own point of view, and making a case for leadership to see how it has sped up your work. So, for example, in the case where leadership was not necessarily against it, but they were just okay with, yeah, if there's an opportunity for AI, why not? But like, we're not going to die on the line for it. A couple of things I did was I started bringing AI as part of our solution set internally. So prototyping with AI, running some automations with AI, using AI based PRDs to communicate with designers so that my VP of product gives me an idea today, boom, tomorrow there's a prototype and I didn't have to consult the designer. So they saw how fast it made my work. And so they were more inclined to consider it in solutions for our users because we could prove that internally. So the strategic awareness lens is also very great if you can prove the concept internally. The second thing is let them be aware of the cost. It's one thing for them to say, okay, now let's invest in this AI-based solution, but then they don't know that this is going to cost us training. This is going to hallucinate sometimes, and we need to spend time training. And then releasing does not mean that it's done and dusted. We need to continue to get enough data to train the model and to decide what good looks like and stuff like that. So let them understand what the cost looks like from an execution point of view. And as much as possible, be open to doing like a quick MVP of what that could look like in your product. And that's why as a product manager, there are different, we'll talk about that in Learning and Growing. There are different skill sets that is also required for you to be able to adopt AI and influence your team to use AI so that even you as a product manager can come up with a prototype of what an MVP potentially look like to spark some ideas that would most likely influence people to adopt. So those are the things I'll think about when you're influencing leadership that is not that keen on it. One, come from a strategic lens, meaning you've proven it and you can let them see the value. Secondly, let them be aware of the cost and be able to do an MVP of what integrating AI into your product could potentially look like. That would be my advice. Now, from the point of view of I being less inclined compared to leadership, it was mostly as a result of trying to slap AI for AI's sake. And sometimes it's important for you as a product manager to also be the one that is the voice of reasoning for customers. If you see everybody's very pro AI, pro AI, pro AI, you probably want to take a step back and say, maybe I need to be the voice of reasoning for the customer here because everybody's very much inclined into the AI direction. So let me stay grounded in the customer needs for the sake of the entire team. And sometimes that's what is necessary for you to have a balanced solution as a team. Great. And the last category of questions, which is learning and growth. How did you build your AI knowledge as a PM? Well, and I understand where this question is coming from because I don't know about you, but a lot of us are probably inundated by so much information and LinkedIn posts and so many AI masterclass in this and so many courses. And I would just urge you to take a step back. Take a step back and don't feel overwhelmed by the need to jump on the AI train or catch up or take this course because it's going to change your life. Take a step back, slow down, and don't get overwhelmed. That's the first thing I'm going to tell you to do. The second thing is make sure you have practical use cases if you want to go into it. Because one of the worst things that you could also have is, oh yeah, I have this course, I've learned this thing, but there's no practical use case that relates to the work that you do or even a personal project to try this on. So to the point of actually having a valid use case or user problem, you should have a valid use case for any AI learning that you want to do. If you want to learn about agentic AIs, what processes are you trying to automate with AI agents? If you want to learn about vibe coding, do you have an idea that you want to vibe code? If you want to learn about using AI to build a solution, do you have a problem that you want to solve that you think AI is a potential leverage? So make sure that you have a very practical use case. That's the second thing. So slow down, have a practical use case. And the third thing I would suggest is lean into like peer community help. Yes, I mentioned earlier that there's a lot of information, everybody's posting, everybody's an expert, but just find that niche community that can speed up your learning, point you in the right directions for the right things so you're not overwhelmed by just everybody spiel on LinkedIn or some podcasts. So lean into community, lean into groups where you work closely together. It might be groups of other product managers that are also trying to learn about AI. It might be groups of engineers. It might just be any community where you all have similar interests and they can point you into the right direction of resources. And that's what I would suggest. So one, slow down. Secondly, have practical use cases for whatever aspect of artificial intelligence you want to learn, and lean into your small trusted communities versus everybody on LinkedIn that is saying a lot of things. Have you developed structured AI prompts for PM workflows? Yeah, I have. I have a couple of GPTs, I have a couple of prompts, and honestly, you find a lot of them all over the place. And organizing all your tooling and your prompts and everything that you use in your workflow is one of the biggest problems now. Like, knowledge management for AI is a huge deal now, because sometimes my tooling and my prompts are just in one ChatGPT thread or a Claude thread, and I'm like, where was that thing? So knowledge management is a huge deal right now. But yes, I think I did a YouTube video a couple of weeks ago around the growth loop GPT that I created. I have some GPTs that I've created that are private to me. So what I would recommend for every product manager is start to build your arsenal of product management prompts and toolings. A lot of people also post on LinkedIn and say, oh, this is the prompts for XYZ. Yeah, you can learn from those, but as much as possible, build your arsenal, collect them, start to share them with people as well, because once you start to share them with people, people start to use them and you can get feedback as well. Share with other product managers in your team, let them critique, and you can continue to improve the instructions or improve what your prompts are doing. Last question in learning and growth category, and for the video actually, is what's the path for PMs moving into AI products in 2025? I'll make this more of an advice. I would say you should get AI literate. Not just because it's the trendy thing or it's a buzzword or it's what is in vogue. I would say get AI literate because it is a significant part of the conversation space right now. And you want to find your sweet spot. You want to find your sweet spot in terms of where AI helps you as a user and where you can leverage it for your own product. So get AI literate. Apply all the things that we said around the learning and the growth. I would also suggest, if you have the guts and the boldness to do it, experiment publicly. Like I said, create some of these workflows, create some of your tooling and share with other people. That way you can get more feedback. That way you can even get some more people to reach out. Don't care about the quality. If it's on a personal basis, I said don't care about the quality, but that's not what I mean. Don't care about it being too perfect, but share publicly, engage publicly. And last thing I'll say is also still not lose sight of the business of everything. Do not lose sight of the business value while you are learning to be AI literate. Don't lose sight of the business value, because I think that is the part where a lot of product managers are going to stand out and are going to be exceptional. And that's the leverage you have as a product manager in the AI trend and space that we're in right now. So those are the things I will encourage you to do moving forward in 2025, 2026. So get literate, experiment publicly, and do not lose sight of business of AI and product in general. Because the future of product management is not in coding models or in vibe coding. It's in translating all of that into value for people and for your business. Okay. I hope it was very helpful. Hopefully, I'll get into another Reddit Q&A session very soon on an area or a topic that is of interest. Let me know other ways in which you guys are using AI or any other questions you have with respect to AI in product management or AI for product managers. Let me know in the comment section down below, and I'll be there hanging out to reply some of your comments. If this was helpful for you, share with your product manager friends, and I'll catch you guys in the next video. Bye.